Hey, thanks for being here. My name is Manny, and this is Manny Studio, where we make music, talk about music, and whatever else I freaking fill my days with. So, I've already talked about this before, but I didn't start playing music in a classical context. I grew up obsessed with rock and grunge and metal, and that ended up becoming my background as a guitarist. But I eventually learned that you could go study music in school after high school, and that was revolutionary to me because all I wanted to do was play guitar. But my only options were to either study classical music or jazz, and I didn't really have any exposure to either of those things. So I figured it was time to get serious and find a teacher that could help me get through those entrance auditions. I eventually found a really great teacher, and I'll never forget my first lesson. He started by playing some music by Barrios, and I had never seen a guitar played that way before. Looking back on it, it seems like such a small thing, but it was really a pivotal moment for me. It was in that moment that I really fell in love with the classical guitar and wanted to pursue studies in it. And while I still really love classical guitar and classical music, the next few years after that proved to be really confusing for me. I never really knew where my place was in this world of classical music. And on top of that, the instrument and music is just so demanding that I didn't really have time to focus on other things that really interested me. By the end of the year, I would just become so sick of playing the same rep over and over again. But you can't just stop practicing because guitar is so hard. I started to feel like I left behind a whole world of sound, and I didn't really feel all that capable on my instrument outside of the repertoire that I would constantly practice. All of this ended up becoming a really big source of anxiety for me and led to me almost quitting music altogether. I eventually ended up in the last year of my undergraduate program really mentally exhausted, and I had a lot of anxiety tied to the guitar, and I didn't really know what to do next. I knew that the right idea would be to pursue graduate studies, but to be honest, I didn't really even feel good enough to be accepted into the programs I was looking at. I knew that there was really cool things happening at Yale, and it was a full scholarship if you got in. The audition process was really intense and pretty taxing, and all throughout the process of it, I had people telling me how hard it would be to get in and not to be disappointed if it didn't work out because it was kind of a long shot. But when I finally got my acceptance letter, it was unlike anything I'd ever really felt before. Years went into this process, and the whole time I never felt good enough. Despite this dream come true of getting into this amazing school, I dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome my first semester there, and it became a really big problem for me, but that's a story for a whole other video. But what I'm going to talk about today are the main ways I learned to cope with this imposter syndrome and my music-related anxiety. So here are 5 things I learned throughout my master's degree at the Yale School of Music. Pew pew. Okay, so community is super important. A lot of the things I took away from those years just ended up happening after a long day of classes and hanging out with friends talking about what we were working on or what was exciting to us at the time. Whether it's with people doing the exact same thing as you or something completely different, it's these interactions that end up opening your mind to the possibilities of art in the 21st century. To me, the reason why community is so important is because making art is really hard, and I think the best things are created through collaboration. Every collaboration I've been a part of has really opened my mind to what I can do with my instrument and the sounds it can create. They made me question things, they made me surprise myself, and they made me really happy with the final end product. Not only that, but these people are still some of my closest friends. And isn't the point of art just to bring people together in one way or another? In the early years of my guitar education, I got used to doing everything alone. You learn music and practice alone, you perform alone, and you don't really get to interact with other musicians, let alone artists outside of the realm of music. But the things that really got me to fall in love with music again were these collaborations that were completely outside of my comfort zone. I think when you enter that area is when you start to really create something new and find your own voice. And by collaborating with different artists, both musicians and non-musicians alike, I started to really realize that a big reason of why I was so unhappy in my undergraduate degree is that I kind of completely forgot to consider my own opinion on things. A lot of what I was pursuing was to kind of achieve a set standard imposed by another person, and I didn't really ever think, well, do I actually like this? Do I really agree with this? And in the end, it made the whole process really stale and frustrating. But when you collaborate within the arts, it's just you and your collaborators trying to realize an idea or figure out how to solve a problem you're having to make this thing happen. That is fun. Yeah, it took a really long time to get to this point, but I think that's why I'm so grateful for my time at Yale, because I really did start to learn the importance of these things, and it's made all the difference in my creative process now. So this kind of goes back to what I was saying before about imposter syndrome. Every single person around me at that school were just amazing, amazing musicians. And I just never really felt like I was good enough to belong there. But once you start talking to people and getting to know people, you realize that everyone's kind of dealing with the same thing. Everyone has insecurities and no one really ever feels good enough. And so maybe it's just normal to feel insecure in a field where the whole goal is trying to play music perfectly every time. And while it was hard at first, I think I really developed my own self-confidence and stopped trying to achieve someone else's idea of how I should play and sound. And as soon as I did that, well, I stopped feeling so anxious every time I picked up my guitar, and it started to be fun again. So something I think I'll always appreciate was really the open music environment that I experienced during this time. The general structure in classes, yeah, there was a lot of aspects of traditional classical music education. But it was the people I met during my time there that really opened my mind and reminded me that there are no rules in music. I realized I was limiting myself so much just based on my previous experience, and I couldn't just play a 6-string nylon acoustic guitar for the rest of my life. I personally would just get way too bored only doing one thing. And so, as you can see, I kind of got a little obsessed with tech, and I picked up electric guitar again, and I've been really finding my own voice again, and it's been amazing. Because classical concerts shouldn't be the sterile thing where everyone's dressed super proper and you have to remain quiet and only clap between pieces. Art's made to make you feel things for the audience and the performer alike. But we make the experience so stressful because we feel like there's so many rules we have to abide by to make it acceptable in classical music. When really, classical music could be the most wild genre. Anyway, I just appreciate that I was able to explore these things and have it involved in my curriculum, and it was taken seriously by my peers and teachers. I learned so much from that process, and it really set up everything that I'm doing now. And yeah, related to that last point, I think this is the biggest takeaway of them all. We all pick up an instrument for different reasons, and we all have different experiences associated with it. And I think a lot of the time, myself included, we get a little too caught up in trying to sound like someone else. Because at the end of the day, it's scary to put yourself out there and put your own ideas forward and your own music forward and have it there to be judged by everyone. And that's a total normal feeling. Everyone feels that way in a creative field. But it's really important to remember that we all have something unique to say with our music and our art, and it deserves to be heard. And for me, it was this process of trying to find my own voice in music that made me so excited to pursue it. And now I just feel really grateful that I can sit in this room every day and spend my day making weird sounds with any instrument I could get my hands on. That's it for this week. Thanks so much for coming to hang out with me again. As always, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'm stoked to see you in next week's video.